What is happening, y'all? I'm going to walk through in today's video why I made my first ever grading submission to PSA. Well, to start, I guess I should share my reasons for grading. And it kind of boils down to a few things. Well, I am considering a new line of effort for my business. Graded cards are all the rage, I've heard, so I might as well at least consider that as something for my own business. And with that said, I finally have enough cards worthy of a submission. In past years, I've maybe had a couple of good candidates. Well, in this case, I'll walk through 39 what I thought would be good candidates for grading. And that was enough where it really justified the business case of making a submission to PSA. And finally, this doesn't get talked about enough, but truly the card preservation aspect was important for me for a few of these cards that I plan on holding long term that I think will appreciate in value over time. And the next logical question is, if you're going to grade, who are you going to grade with? Well, I went with PSA for this order. Most importantly, PSA is still king for modern. I'm really speaking from a resale amount for this statement that they're still king. And everything in this submission was from 1997 to 2023. And whether you like PSA or not, whether you think grading is a scam or not, if you look at resale values, PSA is still the top of the line for modern cards. And so I went with them for this submission. And then the other key thing, knowing that PSA often has long turn times on the scale of months if you send in at their lowest price options, these cards don't have any real time sensitivity for flipping them. And so I don't want to be sending in ultra fickle prospects who may or may not make the opening day roster with this submission with these long turn times. And so I stuck to cards that I thought wouldn't fluctuate in, let's say, 3 months' time from submitting to getting the cards back. And on the right here, just a quick screen grab, if I could talk, of the cards that I submitted for this first ever submission for grading. Now, I didn't know too much about the PSA submission process when I started this journey, so maybe this will be helpful for you if you've never submitted for grading before. With that said, not as tedious as I expected. Maybe in the past, I looked and saw some old clunky Excel sheet that you had to fill out. Those are the way of the dodo. Or maybe they've been the way of the dodo for a long time and I just realized it, but they have a really nifty way where you can kind of type in some of the card details, find the card that you're looking to submit, and simply select that to add it to your submission. Pretty streamlined, really not too painful. The cost involved are a few things. You got to consider an annual membership. This is not necessary, but if you want to get in at the lowest possible rate, then this is worth having. I paid, I want to say it was $150 for 12 months of access to these low rates. And I don't know if this is going to be something that I continue in the future. This is something that we're evaluating as part of this new line of effort for my business. But in any case, annual membership, the actual grading fees, which they charge you based on the service level you provide, as well as the estimated valuation of the card. Now, everything I submitted was under their first tier of value for the card, and so I didn't have to worry about an upcharge. But you should know that if you submit something that they deem is worth more than this first tier of things, I want to say it was $400 a card for my submission, then they will actually tack on an upcharge to your order, which seems kind of weird. Neither here nor there for my own purposes. I'll let other people complain about that, but it seems a little weird. In any case, you also have to ship these items to PSA. You can also find a local event, which are really not all too common with PSA, but you're going to have to ship the cards to them. And then you're going to have to pay a pretty hefty return shipping and insurance charge to get your cards back. To the tune of, I want to say for the 39 cards I submitted, the estimated shipping to return back to me with insurance was like $65 to $70, which seems high as well. But again, really not my right to complain. This is the first time I've ever done it. So I'm just going to go in blindly, do it, and see if I like it, and then decide if I continue doing this in the future. Now, this third bullet, something I wish I would have known in advance, but the costs are charged after the cards have been processed. And so I was kind of forecasting an $800 bill at the time of submission when I sent my cards in. That is not the case. They're actually going to charge me when these cards get graded and are ready to be returned to me. I wish I would have known this, because I started selling a bunch of stuff actually to recoup some cash and have some funds ready to make this payment. And really, you have like at the lowest submission level a 3-month buffer, maybe a 2-month buffer for that cash flow. So maybe not as urgent to sell off some other stuff and recoup funds to pay for your submission right from the get-go. So something to keep in mind there. And the other fun thing that I didn't know when I did this is you can actually ship your cards within a month of making the submission. This could be really helpful for a monthly special, because you could put in an order on, say, January 31st, which is what I did, and you will have then a full month to ship your cards. In my case, I had a couple of really cool cards come in on February 1st that would be good candidates for grading, and I did not include those on my original submission because I thought, hey, I have to have these in and shipped. Really, what I could have done if I was super confident that I was going to submit them, which I kind of was, I could have put them on the order that I submitted on January 31st, let them come in, and then shipped them to PSA after they came in, because they give you that 1 month to submit, actually send the cards after submitting the order online. And with a monthly special, you of course want to lock that in before it goes away. And then from a user experience, as I was talking about a little bit, they do have an online dashboard, pretty pleasant, as well as a mobile app, which is pretty good. So not as tedious as I expected. Well, what did I send? I was pretty selective on what I sent. I didn't just send junk, in my personal opinion. I stuck to some rare-ish or unique-ish cards of star players for the most part. Everything from complete set blue star parallels, which have a print run of $2.99, and very, very few have been graded. And then some base rookies, which in my opinion will always have some demand, people looking for these because they're superstar players and everyone wants a rookie card. Some numbered rookies, some miscellaneous numbered cards of the likes of Derek Jeter, who you've definitely heard of, and Tink Hintz, who maybe you've heard of. He's actually a prospect, and even though I don't do prospecting all too often, it was a pretty fresh card, so I figured I would send it in, as well as some oddball cards, namely of professional disc golfer Paul Macbeth, who is the absolute GOAT and had some really cool cards in the 2016 Topps Allen and Ginter set. But the key point here, besides selecting the card, which probably should have some novel characteristics and also be of a significant player, the cards that I personally selected had already been, in air quotes and in quotes on the screen, paid off. So I had already obtained these cards either through my personal collection before I got into reselling, or I had already paid these off with profits from other sales in the past few years. And I see that as a significant buffer for risk and variability with grading. I don't know exactly what this grade will return as. And of course, the hope is that if it gets a good high grade, if it's a low population, that will add value to the card. But think of it this way. If I have a card that I effectively got for free, and I do think it to be in good condition, if it comes back, and even if it's in just okay condition, let's say a PSA 8, that is still pretty solid from a financial return perspective under the condition that I have paid the card off or that I acquired it at no cost basis. So that was the criteria in short of what I sent for this submission. And if you're interested In the dollars and cents, after all those costs mentioned, it was roughly $19.98 per card to make this first ever submission to PSA. Of course, I can't just tell you about these cards. I should at least give you a little bit of eye candy. Later on, I'll do a grading reveal when these results come back, but here are a few pictures of some of the cards that I submitted, and you can see these all fall under the categories that I was talking about. Now, each of these cards has a story about how I acquired it at some point in the past. The Paul Macbeth, I'm a big disc golf fan. When 2016 Topps Allen Ginter came out, I really wasn't into collecting and hadn't been for a few years, but I saw that he had a card in the set. I collected baseball cards as a kid, and so I bought 4 or 5 different Paul Macbeth cards on eBay from that set because I thought they were fun. And I've sat on those for 9 years at this point. Jose Altuve, that came in a fairly recent bulk purchase that I made where I bought thousands of 2011 Topps cards at pennies per card from a seller, and I found 4 Jose Altuve rookie cards in that lot. The Gunnar Henderson, part of a complete set, where I bought a complete set and I opened it, and to my total surprise, every card had these blue stars on it, and upon further research, they're pretty hard to come by. They're short printed to $299 and really are not that many available for sale. The Ichiro, I bought that on eBay when I got back into collecting a few years ago. The Jeter, I actually pulled myself. This is the best card I've ever pulled. It came as a redemption in a 2008 Upper Deck SPX pack. Posey, similar to the Altuve, bulk lot. The Kershaw, bought recently on eBay. I saw a low buy it now price. Thought it would be a good candidate for grading. The Guerrero was gifted a pack of cards in 2016 for Christmas. I opened it. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., first Bowman Chrome. Didn't know who he was. Had been out of the game of collecting for a while. It sat in my closet for probably 4 years before I looked back in it and found it. And given his status and that it's a fairly significant card, I thought I should submit it now that I'm doing grading a few years later. The Greinke rookie, dollar box at a card show. The Machado, got that in a lot of gold parallels for probably $1.45 or something like that, along with a few other gold parallels that was in a poorly worded eBay listing. The Darvish I pulled out of a dollar box at my local card store, and it was even then sold to me at a discount. And then finally, just on the screen, the Tink Hintz, bought that at a card show in the dollar box, and he's a prospect, probably going to make the big leagues this year. So I share those anecdotes to say that my current philosophy towards grading is let me slowly accrue cards that are good candidates for grading, and then when the time comes, I can go ahead and submit this batch. And ideally, all the cards will come at a low cost basis or something that has already been paid off, which is the case here. You can't do this overnight. You can't get this quality of cards. Well, not the highest end stuff. They still are nice and desirable. You can't get this overnight for pennies. It really has to be a slow and steady process over time to get these at the cost basis that I did. And then you also have to have the eye to say, okay, I think this is going to be a good candidate for grading. Anyways, enough of that. A lot depends actually on how the grades come back. So you can pick all the cards you want, but you also have to rely on the grading process to add value. My sales strategy for these is kind of split in a few ways. First of all, if I have a low population count card with few available for sale, I'm just going to go ahead and throw on a high buy it now fixed price listing with best offer. And even if someone comes in and maybe gives me a 60% or 50% of my list price offer, this could be a shield against not knowing what it's actually worth, or it could just be trying to milk the best possible offer from a buyer for this specific subset of cards that really aren't available all too often. The second category is probably the most common I'm going to do, especially with the base rookie cards, thinking of the Jose Altuve and Buster Posey like you saw in the last slide. I'm going to do competitive bin with a best offer, and I probably won't want to rely on the best offer part of that. If I'm competitive for these moderate population counts, especially if they're high grade, and I am hopeful for some tens here, these should sell. Fundamentally, someone will want a high grade rookie of a future Hall of Famer, and if I price it competitively, someone should buy it. And so that would be the strategy there, is don't try to overprice it, but really try to be right at that competitive market rate, maybe even slightly under, to get a quick sale. As for lower graded cards, probably would crack the slab, the encapsulation, and sell them as raw. Some people do not think this is ethical. I disagree with them. In my opinion, if it's authentic and if the card to the naked eye presents well, then it doesn't matter if it's graded a 6 or if it is sold as raw. Of course, if you can discern that there is damage, you should disclose that on the listing, and that is something I do anyways. But if it presents really well and you just say, hey, I have no flipping clue why PSA gave me such a low grade, I don't think that's on you as the seller to need to disclose that it has been previously graded. Obviously, if it's serial numbered or super rare, someone will find that and they will use that as leverage against you. But if it's a bulk base card, I wouldn't worry about it. And again, you can sell that if there's no discernible defects and for whatever reason it was graded lowly. You can sell that and say, I do not see any defects on this. That's my personal opinion. I'd be welcome to hear in the comments if you think it is wrong to crack a slab and sell the raw copy. But at this point, I do not think there's any issue with that whatsoever, so long as you disclose how you've actually evaluated the card yourself as a raw card. And then as far as long-term holds, what I'm calling the trifecta, basically you have a notable player, significant card, and it's scarce. Those are really, really good candidates to me to hold for a long time. Those are things that should go up in value because that notable player aspect will make sure that there's demand in the future. Significant card is also a demand multiplier as well as scarcity. This is really fundamental. I mean, this is why Mickey Mantle 1952 tops are so coveted. This is why any Roberto Clemente card from his playing days in high grade, which thus makes it scarce, is coveted. Significant cards, rookie cards. This is really, to me, the qualitative assessment for what makes a card valuable or not. And you can imagine 20 years from now, a bunch of these prospects from today won't be notable. And because there are so many cards out there here in 2025, it won't be a significant card. And the scarcity, even if it's numbered now, it won't carry as much weight as a card that was numbered 10 to 15 years ago. So this is my trifecta for long-term hold potential for these graded cards. And then the other thing you got to keep in mind is if you're trying to dump inventory, if you've tried all of the above and still have a card available after some amount of time, consider auctions. People love graded slabs. So you shouldn't shy away from auctions, especially if you have strong sales and higher grades than expected. That way you can actually get your cash back in your business and not worry about just holding it as inventory. All right, so here is where I will probably have a lot of feedback for myself once I actually get these grades back. But I am assuming a minimum grade of 8 for at least 36 of the 39 cards that I submitted. This is based on the assumption, on the belief that if I can inspect a card with my naked eye and it looks really good to me, then it is an 8. That is my current belief. I am open to being proven wrong on that. Also, for this specific batch, this is not true for everything, but for this specific batch, I am saying that a PSA 8 value is greater than or equal to the raw value. And the reason for this is because you don't want to be in no man's land. You don't want to be in a spot where people just would rather have a raw copy than your graded copy. And so if I'm saying most of these are going to be PSA 8s or higher, I want to make sure that the floor of that, the PSA 8s, are at least the same or more desirable than a raw copy. And then the next one, this could be a horrible prediction in either direction, but I'm going to say 1 to 4 Gem Mint 10 grades across this batch of 39. Now, I visually inspected these. I know PSA has recently kind of re-articulated their grading submission standards or their grading criteria for centering in particular. And so I am going into this hoping to be conservative, saying that only roughly 10% of these will gem, obviously hoping for a higher amount than just that small number. But the point is that if 4 of these gem, if 3, 2, 1 of these gem, that hopefully the sales from that will outweigh all of the other PSA 8s if my other assumption holds for the rest of the order. And then I have to throw this last bullet. This might just be trying to gain good karma or something. I don't know, but I should just mention this is my first submission, so maybe I'm being over optimistic about this. Of course, you get excited when you submit these things. You want to see them all come back as 10s. That won't be the case. So on one hand, I am trying to maybe be realistic or at least hyper conservative or mildly conservative with the gem rate, but I still think I'm probably being over optimistic, and maybe I don't know as much about this as I would like to think. As far as pre-work goes, didn't really do all that much. Visual inspection and light research on comps, which we'll get here to in the next few slides. So, jumping in, these are the cards I submitted, and this made me so angry putting this together. I spent more time than I wanted on this, and this is also something I never want to do in the future because it's just not worth the time. There's so much variability. I've kind of grouped this to say that if my minimum assumed grade is an 8, what's the value of an 8, a 9, a 10? And all these values that you're seeing here are from PSA's price guide, giving it a chance for this activity. That said, I think these values are pretty wrong. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., 2016 Bowman Chrome First, who in their right mind is paying $315 for a PSA 10 copy of that, which is really not a scarce card. Yeah, it is a notable player. Yeah, it is significant. No, it is not scarce. It's pretty easy to come by. But the point here, don't care about the values all too much. I think people spend way more time on comps than they really need. You need to think about the fundamentals. I need to think about the fundamentals. Is it a notable player? Is it a significant card? Is it scarce? If it hits all 3 of those and you effectively paid nothing for the original card, trust me, you're probably going to be doing well if it comes back an 8 or higher, or the value of a raw card or higher. So I'll flip through this, but you're really not going to learn too much from this. And just don't be too convinced by the numbers here. I don't really trust PSA price guides. I trust that they're pulling data for these things and coming up with a number. I don't trust that it will be a great indication of what you could sell your card for if you had it in hand and if you listed it on eBay as we're talking here. So flip through these a couple more times, but this is not an activity I will ever do again. I might do some just preliminary searches just to get a feel for what something like a base rookie card of Yadier Molina or Freddie Freeman sells for, but I don't want to have to do this for every single card. I really want to get to the point where I can trust the fundamentals and know that I acquired the card at a low cost basis and then trust the return from there. So that kind of does it. That wraps it up for why I made the submission, as well as what I submitted to PSA. For next time, I also will consider vaulting the cards, which is kind of a new-ish feature from PSA where you don't actually have to have them physically shipped them back to you, or you can actually sell them on PSA's eBay store, which is kind of interesting. I'd have to look at their fee rates to understand if that really was a financially smart move. I also maybe will introduce more scrutiny on pre-submission inspection. Like I literally just held these up, put them under a normal light and looked at them, said, oh, corners look good, surface looks fine. There were cards I did not submit because I looked at them and recognized they had a noticeable corner ding or a surface scratch that I couldn't tell if it had it in the top loader. But maybe in the future, I will do more scrutiny. And then finally, kind of a question mark around vintage. If you've been following my YouTube channel, I did a submission and got a return and have sold all cards from an SGC submission of vintage cards that I did, all in the time I've been waiting on this darn PSA order. But then the question is, would I go through another provider like PSA for vintage next time? If you watch that other video, kind of like where I'm at from my vintage mindset, but always something to consider. So in any case, hope this helped you if you've never submitted before, just some things to think about when making a grading submission. I'll be doing a grading reveal when these cards come back to me, and we'll do a little commentary on if my assumptions were correct and how I'm doing with sales if these things start flying off the shelves. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.